I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Juan?
We continue on the subject of the financial crisis with a man the National Review calls the most dangerous political philosopher in the West. The New York Times calls him the Elvis of cultural theory. Slovenian philosopher and public intellectual Slavoj Žižek has written over 50 books on philosophy, psychoanalysis, theology, history, and political theory. His latest, just out from Verso, is called First as Tragedy, Then as Farce. It analyzes how the United States has moved from the tragedy of 9/11 to the farce of the financial meltdown. Zizek's latest offering, also excerpted in the October issue of Harper's Magazine, opens with the words, quote, "The only truly surprising thing about the 2008 financial meltdown is how easily the idea was accepted that its happening was unpredictable." He goes on to recall how the demonstrations against the IMF and the World Bank over the past decade all protested the ways in which banks were playing with money and warned of an impending crash. They were met with tear gas and mass arrests.
The message, he writes, was, quote, loud and clear, and the police were used to literally stifle the truth. Well, Slavoj Žižek addressed a full house at Cooper Union here in New York City on Wednesday night and joins us now in our Firehouse studio. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Thanks very much. It's my pleasure.
It's good to have you with us. Relate the protest to
You are even better than Fox News, which I usually watch. More amusing.
I'd like to ask you, you're also critical of the progressive or the left response here. You say in your article in Harper's, there's a real possibility that the primary victim of the ongoing crisis will not be capitalism, but the left itself, insofar as its inability to offer a viable global alternative was again made visible to everyone. Could you elaborate on that?
I am a radical leftist. I like to call myself, in a very conditional way, a communist even. But I think one should, as a leftist, really concede the amount of the defeat of the left in the last 20 years. That's the sine qua non condition of a possible reviewal. So yes, apart from very sympathetic things suggested by people like Stiglitz, Krugman, which are basically a return to Keynesian welfare state, and apart from some interesting, but I don't think they are the solution, economic ideas like the basic income or so-called renta básica in Brazil, basic rent, which is a utopia of its own, I think. I sometimes, apart from this, have a strange paranoid idea that maybe this crisis was manufactured so that people will see that even if there is a crisis, the left really doesn't have a global answer. I see, what worries me is two things about the left. First, it's more and more legalistic moralization, you know. It's kind of a pure form of protest against injustice. Then the only thing you can do is legal forms and so on. In this sense, many of the ex-leftists are getting depoliticized. They no longer ask the truly basic questions. Like even now, all the outcry was, oh, those bank profiteers and so on. I totally agree with what we just heard. But don't you think that the truth is a little bit more complex, in the sense of, you know much more about this than me, but the way I see it is that one of the roots of the present crisis is not just greed, is that after the digital bubble at the beginning of our millennium, the idea was how to keep prosperity, how to keep economy alive. And it was, as far as I remember, even a little bit of a really bipartisan decision. Let's make it easier in real estate and so on to keep it moving. So, you know, there is a structural problem beneath all this psychological topic of the greedy bankers, which is, that's how capitalism works, my God. Which is why even concerning our beloved model, Bernard Madoff, no? I didn't like it how they focused on him. Wait a minute, he was just the radical version of where the system is pushing you. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not crazy, which is why we need to nationalize all banks and introduce immediately socialist dictatorship or what. What I'm just saying is, let's not get rid of the problem by too easily making it into a psychological problem. You know, you can be an evil guy, but there must be very precise institutional, economic, and so on, coordinates, background, which allows you to do what you do. The second thing, I also didn't like the cry shared by left and right-wing populists of help the Main Street, not the Wall Street. Where, sorry, but those bank managers who emphasized in capitalism there is no Main Street without Wall Street. In today's industry, because of the competition and immense investment into new inventions and so on, without large accessibility, availability of credits, there is no prosperous Main Street. So this is a false choice. So again, with all respect for the left and so on, I think we should avoid quick moralization if we mean it seriously.
You write, is the bailout then really a socialist measure? If it is, it takes a peculiar form, a socialist measure whose primary aim is to help not the poor but the rich, not those who borrow but those who lend.
Yeah, I mean, this is my old thesis, that capitalism always was socialism for those who are on the top. That's the basic paradox of it.
What about healthcare?
Oh, now you touch my favorite topic.